Let's get started today. So I'm actually going to go over the warm-up. Normally I skip this in my videos, but I want to make sure everyone's got a solid foundation for our lesson today. So today you're going to take a look at these ideas of converting from percent to decimal, decimal to percent, and then we're really going to look at that in great depth as we work through class today. So when we work from percent to decimal, the first thing we kind of keep in mind is the word percent means per cent, means per 100, so times 100. So to create a percent from a fraction or from a decimal, you multiply it by 100. And then if you're going to go backwards, so if this is from fraction, or from decimal to percent, per 100 times 100, 2%. It makes sense if I'm going to go from percent to decimal, I'm actually going to do the inverse. I'm going to use the opposite. I'm going to divide by 100. So because our math system, our number system is a base 10 system, that just means I'm going to move 2 decimal places. So if I'm going here, if I'm going from decimal to two decimal places, DECP, LACE, and I'm going to go to the right, and if I'm going to go divide, I'm going to go 2 decimal places to the left. So if I go from percent to decimal, I'm going to say, okay, this is 15 hundredths. I'm going to say this is 8 hundredths. Okay? And then vice versa, like we talked about from decimal to percent, I'm going to move 2 to the right. So this is 30%. This is 55%. All right. So, and then making sure I'll take a second and check these, work these two problems out, 5 and 6, and see what you come up with. All right. So if we take a look at these, 3 hundredths as a percent. So it's, as a decimal, it's 3 hundredths. 3 hundredths. There's the hundredths place. So it's going to become 3%. If a dollar bill is made of special paper, 75% cotton, 25% linen, what is 75% of decimal? It's 75 hundredths is that information. So today we're going to focus more not on decimals and fractions and percents that are within that range of 1 to 100 like we just looked at, but ones that are greater than 100% or less than 100%. Now we'll still practice the other numbers, but this is our goal today. And you can find this up on the topic page. It's right on the side of the topic page where you find this video. So you're welcome to use this or take a screenshot of it, and kind of works this. This is a great little tool you can have in the back of your head or print a copy of it if you're having trouble. It walks you through how to go from fraction to percent. Divide the numerator by the denominator and multiply by 100. And then put your percent sign. If I go from percent to decimal, so you can see 3 divided by 5 is 6.6. 6 times 100 is 60. Okay, I typically go from fraction to decimal to percent just to make math easier. I find that's a faster process than trying to go across this way. If I want to go from percent to decimal, like we did on the previous page, we move the decimal place 2 to the left. If I want to go from decimal to fraction, I write the fraction over the appropriate power of 10. So I'd be like 6 over 10, 6 tenths, and then simplify the fraction. All right, so let's get to work on our lesson today. So let's touch on this. I'll take about 5 minutes. Pause the video, take a minute or two, and fill out a couple of these, the ones I've marked with an X. Fill those lines out on just a random sheet of paper on the side of your notes. All right, pause the video, see what you come up with. All right, now that you've taken a second to do it, I typically go decimal to percent. That's pretty easy. So this is 39%, just like we were practicing on the previous page. This one, I'm going to actually just say it. 39 hundredths, 39 over 100. I can't simplify 39. It's only divisible by 3 and 13, and 100 is not divisible by either of those numbers. So moving down here, 11 25ths. Well, I can divide 11 by 25, and that's one way to do it. But I found an easier way is to make the denominator a power of 100 or 1,000 or 10,000. I can turn 25 into 100 by multiplying it by 4. So I use my equivalent fraction knowledge or my proportional knowledge to figure out that this is 44 hundredths. Well, I just write 44 hundredths, and then I get 44%. The other way I'm working through here, I go 375, so this becomes 0.375. And then I'm coming over here, and I write it as a fraction, 375 over 1,000, and then I have to simplify. Now, I mean, you can look at it and go, okay, you can find a common denominator here, or greatest common factor. It happens to be 125. I don't expect you to know that off the top of your head, but it ends up getting us down to 3/8. That's our lowest common denominator. Now, I didn't scratch that one, but I wanted to make sure I did that one real quick with you. If I do 17 over 20, this time I'm multiplying it by 5, so this becomes 85 hundredths, and then 85%. And then my last one down here, 5/9. Now, converting 5/9, the only way to really do this, I can't turn 9 into 100. There's no way I can make that work. So I'm going to do 5 divided by 9. Drop my decimal. I'll go ahead and go out 3 decimal places just to see what I've got. 9 goes into 50 5 times. Put my decimal place, that's 45. 5, 0. Okay, that's another 55, 45. And you'll start to see, okay, I've got a pattern. I've got that pattern, so it's actually going to be 0.55, and we'll go say 555. It's actually, if you want to tell me it's truly a repeating fraction, but that's hard to do as a percent, so you're going to say 55.5%, okay, as your fraction, as your percent, okay? So kind of walks this through. Now let's keep working through. Now those are numbers between less than 1 but greater than 0. But now let's take a look at numbers that are less than 1 and greater than 100%. So let's take a look at how these work. So if I've got 2/10 as a decimal, so remember the idea here, percent to decimal, so decimal to percent is times 100. Percent to decimal is divide by 100. And remember, we said the simplest way to do that is to move the decimal point 2 places. So it's 2, and then we say, okay, this is 2/10, hundredths, thousandths. So as a fraction, it's 2 thousandths. And I can simplify that one more to 1/500. All right, go ahead and see what you come up with for 0.6%. Pause the video and start it again when you're ready to look at the answers. All right, so you guys did a good job. It's 0. It's 6 thousandths again. So this time 6 thousandths as a fraction. Now I can simplify it down to 3 500ths. I can't go any smaller. So these are my 2 answers. Let's take a look at another problem like this. This time let's look at a number greater than 100%. It doesn't change what I'm doing. If I'm going from percent to decimal, I'm going to move it 2 places to the left. So it's still, this time it's 1 7/10. Then to go with a decimal, I'm just going to write it as it says, 1 7/10. I can't simplify 7/10, so those are my answers. All right, go ahead and pause the video and figure out what 230% would be as a fraction and as decimal or mixed number. All right, so it's 2 3/10. And again, it's simply 2 3/10. I can't simplify these any further. Now, sometimes I can, and you'll see that as we kind of work our way through it. So if I take a look at this one, Jimmy's savings increased 250%. Write 250% as a mixed number in simplest form and as a decimal. So I like to go to decimal first. So move my decimal place, it's 2.5. So he has 2.5 times as much money as he had before. It's a nice little savings bump. And if I turn this into 2 5/10, this is where I couldn't stop right here. I'd have to turn this into 2 1/2 to have it in simplest form. So these are my 2 answers. Go ahead and figure the same thing out with a profit increase for that company of 110%. All right, so as a fraction or a decimal, it's 1 1/10. As a fraction or a mixed number, it's 1 1/10, exactly the way it sounds. It's really important that you guys take the time and learn how to know your place values to the right of your decimal point, because that's really how you want to work at it and see how it comes out. So now let's take a look at it when it's not something that's already in tense form. If I have a fraction, I want to go to percent. So I typically go from fraction to decimal to percent. Now you can do it another way. You can go from fraction straight to percent. But to do that, we divide the numerator by the denominator and then multiply by 100. I typically find it's easier to kind of go 2 steps to get to 1. Typically less division. So if I take 1 1/4 or 1 1/4, most of us know that 1/4, by saying 1/4, we know, 1/4 is 25%, 0.25. Well, there's my decimal right there. And if I say, okay, 2 to the right, it's 125%. There's my final answer. Take a second, do the same thing with 1 3/5. So the first thing you do is you turn it into a power of 10, so it'd be 1 6/10, which would go to 1 6/10, which would finally go to 160%. And again, you could jump the other way, but in my mind, it makes it quicker just to work my way through here. Unless I have no choice, I'm not going to worry about, I'm not going to do the long division unless that's my last resort. It takes longer. So now I turn this as a percent. All right, so percent from decimal to percent. We've been practicing this over and over again. It's 168. We move it 2 to the right. So this becomes 168%. And you do the second one. I see you've probably already done this. So this is 109%. All right, let's take a look at another one. Now we've got some really small numbers. We've got 75 10,000ths. So moving it from a decimal like this to a percent is the same as we've been doing the whole time, but it's a less than 1. So it's 75 hundredths of 1%. Okay, and try the same thing on this one. All right, this one happens to be 800ths of 1%. It's a really tiny amount. Now, just giving us a word problem kind of idea, a cheetah is our fastest land mammal, but a peregrine falcon is the fastest bird in the world. It has speeds that can reach 2.5 times as fast as a cheetah. So what is that as a percent? Well, 2.1, 2 to the right. It's 210% faster than a cheetah. And if a cheetah goes around, say, 60, 70 miles an hour, that's a pretty fast bird. All right, and the last thing I want you to try is figuring this one out. What is the percent? So if Mercury is so small, what is the percent of its mass compared to Saturn? What percent mass of Saturn is the mass of Mercury? $58,000ths of 1%. It's that much smaller than the mass of Saturn. Saturn is an absolutely massive planet. All right, now you're kind of at your end, so you're working on your homework. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to help you.